And we are live. Hello and welcome to another episode of our weekly FreudenFreude podcast, where we bring you content to help you grow and develop as a person and as a leader.
I'm Sandra Corona,
And I am Claudia, and
and we are
coaches.
coaches.
Coaches. Yes, 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 coaches. So expect some coaching perspective.
Yes, and so I'm a coach for leaders for the neurodiverse community and the meat management.
Yes, and I do help professional leaders as well as their teams get to the root of their problems and explore solutions.
Right.
So there we go. Introductions out of the way. We have another interesting and timely topic today, and that is dealing with uncomfortable constraints. Will you get us maybe started on that today, Sandra?
Okay, so we were talking about, the move and the process and all of these things that happen that you don't think about that cause you all of this conflict, this internal conflict for me. Like I was talking about the internal conflict that I was going through, right? And
Let's maybe just provide a little bit of context to people that do not follow our podcast regularly, that might not know what, the move that you're talking about. Maybe
okay,
remind us.
okay, great. Yeah. So I am repatriating from Saudi Arabia back to Houston, Texas. This was a personal decision. So no, we did not get fired. It was a personal decision that we've been making for quite some time, but I think the emotional part had to be there to actually happen. And it just sort of happened that my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law stays alone, and so now it's time to take over, and now be the head of the household. My husband has taken that position, let's put it that way, and that was my father-in-law's will, and so we're respecting that. Anyways, in what we're talking about today is about the move process itself, the emotions, the conflicts, the internal conflict that you go through, the process itself that a lot of people don't talk about, and that is what we're going to manage today. And we were having a great conversation, Claudia and I, yesterday about how many times we think about or we don't think about, right? We just go through it. We just do it because it just feels like something you have to do. And if you can help me out here to give me your point of view, I can start with the conversation because there's so much I have to talk about, right? And I don't want to deviate from the conversation.
I thank you for that. I think that obviously this is not just a move related topic, right? I mean, the fact that we are operating in our individual situations with so much external influence and constraints over which we have no control.
Mm-hmm.
And that very often we so much energy gets expended on our part about pushing against those constraints rather than accepting them and doing our best to gracefully navigate whatever little control space we have left. In coaching, this is called the locus of control, that you should always, I think, as you make decisions, as you behave and react to your environment, ask yourself, is this thing something I have control over, that I can potentially influence, or that I have no control over whatsoever, right? It's kind of these three spheres: direct control, influence, or no control whatsoever. And I think that it really helps because if we expend energy on things that we have no control over, that energy is lost. It does not make a difference, and it's kind of more effective to try to be more mindful of the things that you have control over, and that's where you should focus. Obviously, I think for Sandra now, for you, it's like this move, because you get into this more stressed out, nervous general state, right? All of these things are just so much more acute, like you perceive them differently. We always, in whatever situation, run against external constraints. They always exist, but sometimes they're a little bit more triggering or painful than others. Does that resonate with you?
Yes, I think it all comes down that something that we were talking about is the desire, the need to control something, right? It's this thing that we have about, well, not everybody has that, right? We also have to stress that out, that not everybody has that desire to control things. But being the people that we are, Claudia and myself, having a business, we do feel the need to have control of the process of what we're doing. So when a process is out of your reach and it's out of your comprehension, what do? Do you stress out? Do you find resources to help you go through the process? Or do you just simply say, you know what, I'm not going to worry about this. I am going to give it over to somebody else. And then when it's ready, I'm fine. Well, it's not that easy. It's not
Right,
that
right.
easy, when
And
it's people like you and I.
yeah, it comes down to making decisions, right? And the
Mhm.
more aware we are of this locus of control as we take
Yeah.
decisions, the better it is. If it's something like I have no control over, then I just let it go. For
Yeah.
instance, uh, people that know me know that I don't watch the news. I don't. Okay. So some might call me ignorant, and that's okay. There's a lot of events and politics that I do not know anything about, but it was my choice,
Mhm.
because I was just finding myself getting riled up because of things I could not control. I
Yes.
find that the really important things always reach me. People tell me about it. I read this very aptly named little newspaper here in Luxembourg that's free and gets distributed at bus stations and things like that, called L'Essentiel, which means the essentials. And gee whiz, guess what? Like the few headlines that are on there are really the essential things you have to know to
Mhm.
navigate local life and international life. Um, but it was a decision, because I realized the cost to me and my nervous system and my psyche was too high for the amount of control or influence that it was affording me. So I decided that I should shelve that. And I think for me, it went even into the realm of, as a coach, I
Mhm.
need to surround myself with positive things and solutions and peace of mind and calmness. And I cannot go out and get all worked up because of local news that gets very often, let's face it, by the media, sensationalized and dialed up to the maximum to make it really really impactful to our psyche. And so that's an example of letting go. It's a decision, a personal decision. I will never tell other people they should do the same. It's not my place, nor do I want to. um it's just this ability to realize, this is how it affects me. Can I influence it or not? And then letting it go if you so decide, right? And but other times you might not want to do it, or you get very much involved, and that's personal choice, but a choice. And I think the thing to stress, it should be a conscious choice based on awareness, and not because other people tell you to, or it's expected to, or it's culturally determined to be so, and so on. It's a personal choice based on awareness. Well,
Correct.
so
Correct. No, no, no.
but
No, I think what you said is absolutely right. As a coach, it's not that we want to ignore what's going on around the world, because I too am a little bit, I limit my intake of news, of politics, of all these things that are going on around the world, just because I can't avoid it. I can, but it's there. And so I absorb it and I'm like, oh, okay, why? Because I feel that like you said, there's a lot of manipulation going around, and it's something that you have to make the conscious choice to say, is this going to help me be prepared for my clients to be at peace? Because there is a process, right? That we have to understand that before you coach a person, we have to be in the right state of mind. We have to be ready to accept information, and number one, not be judging, right? Which is the biggest important thing. Not have an agenda, to get over or through the process as soon as possible, kind of offer advice, not fall into that part. And why does the muse, or why do we believe, Claudia and I, that it blocks our ability? It's because news puts you in that position of judging, of thinking, of criticizing, of wanting to say something, of being upset. And that's not where you want to be, right?
right, it's this general sense of stress. For me, it was stressful, and for me, that actually extends to social media. You will very rarely see me look at a feed that's just random things coming in, even though where I'm active, which is LinkedIn, is better than most, right? But it's like really this what I can control is what I ingest mentally, and so it's true that we need to be in this calm, settled, non-judgmental, or also called impartial kind of mindset, and open. And when I'm mentally tired or nervous or upset or emotionally charged, I cannot provide the optimal space for my client. I can't, me personally. And we all are more or less sensitive to things like that. Some people can shrug it off. Some are more easily stimulated, let's say, by these kind of things. And then ultimately, we just it's just like some people can watch violent movies and others can't. It's all make believe. We know it's but some react more strongly to that, or might even dream at night or stuff like that. So then you have to make the personal choice: do I watch something like that or don't I?
Yes, correct. I think that is a good example of how to manage certain constraints, and that is not being prepared in the right mindset, right? Now, if I was to talk about, hopefully it's okay that I jump here with the moving process of making a decision, a conscious decision of when an issue is a real issue out of my hands, and how do I handle it? Well, it's not that I handle it very well. I don't. Let's be upfront. We're all humans, and it takes a little bit of time to process and say, how do I want to handle this, right? One of the clear examples that I'm going through right now is managing the process of the move for my dogs. And it's not easy. It's not easy when you're not on top of things. But then it's also important to decide and see, is it really that hard, or is it because I'm not being informed? That's another thing that we have to keep in mind. Constraints sometimes come because we are not informed, or we're not informing ourselves. And I realized that, I'm being, truly honest, that at the beginning it felt overwhelming, right? When this, that when you're moving, the process itself, the first few steps, it's like a baby. You fall and you fall and you fall, and you feel like, I want to give up, but yet you don't. because you know you don't have an option. There's no going back, right? And so I feel that if I was to say what is the best way, is to number one, say I am only in control of what I get information from. That's my first best advice that I can give people, is inform yourself. And once you're informed, you know, how much of it is in my control now that I'm informed. Don't consider something to be difficult if you're not informed. If it just, if you're just scanning through something, be truthful. Are you just scanning through the process, and then since it seems like a lot, you're giving up? Or are you actually putting the effort into it, the work into it? And it goes with everything, right? You have to put the work into something for it to work out. That is my first advice at the first 15 minutes of our podcast. So what do you think?
Yeah. Inform yourself about the steps, but also resources available to you. If it's tough for you to do, can you get help, or can you have somebody else take over? And you talked at some point even about, taxiing the dogs and things like that. There's resources out there that can help you if you do not necessarily want to do it alone. Because you touched on one interesting thing here. Sometimes we reach the point of no return on a journey, right?
Mhm.
Earlier I talked about conscious decisions about what to do or not to do. Well, sometimes you don't have a choice. That's the whole point of a thing. And you are forced, okay, to use a strong word, forced down a road that is uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And you want to things, accept that, because it's really uncomfortable. It might be tedious. It might be really difficult, hard work. It might just be because it's outside of your comfort zone, boring. It might be any kind of things, but you just don't want to go there. And I think sometimes we just have to put on our big boy pants and our big girl pants, and then say, okay, so I don't really want to, but guess what? Such is life. I'm
Yeah.
gonna show up. I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna do it. In your case with the move, I think it's helpful that you actually decided to move.
Yes.
Okay. So that, of course, is a saving grace in all that. But what about somebody, for instance, getting fired, or getting a new boss at work, or somebody in the family, God forbid, gets sick or something like that. There's things, all of a sudden you're forced into these things that you really don't know. And, sometimes there is no easy way.
No.
You just have to do it. You have to come to grips that life sometimes, pardon my English, sucks. And you just have to do it. And I think that, nevertheless, realizing that that is a matter that we do not have a choice in, that we do not have control over this constraint,
Mhm.
this dealing with a sick person, dealing with a difficult job or a new boss, whatever financial trouble, whatever it can be, so don't even expend energy. Accept the constraint for what it is, and try to find the little things that you can control.
Mhm.
And guess what? The biggest thing is you can control. It
Yeah.
what goes up in here. So changing perspective, reframing maybe a problem as an opportunity, getting some nice coaching done to iron out the wrinkles, mindset, all those kind of things. That is what you have control over, and always, no
Right.
matter what the external constraints are. And I think that is maybe my biggest takeaway from this is that you can always view it differently. If you can't avoid it, enjoy it, kind of mentality, right? If you can't find the silver linings, find the pieces of opportunity, try to make an elegant solution, try to, strengthen relationships through this experience.
Mhm. Yes, it is. You made me think when you said what happens when a person gets fired. Well, I can tell you one thing with the company that my husband works, if a person gets fired, which is really, really rare, I mean, you really have to be really bad at what you do, and I mean really bad to get fired. Okay. But when they do get fired, it's only 30 days that people have to leave the country. So you're talking, this is not your country. So now do a plan exactly that we have been planning for 3 years, right? Like, what do we have? What would we take? Like, all of these decisions, they are in your control. So start planning for eventualities. What can I say? Eventualities for the unexpected. Start preparing for the unexpected, and really seriously, how many people can say that we do? Really hardly ever do you hear a person plan for the unexpected. And when we talk about the unexpected, we have to talk about sometimes impulsivity being an issue, right? Because, say, like, for example, we're talking about getting fired. I'm assuming that people, well, they become impulsive because they become reactive, right? They're just thinking with their gut. They're upset. They have to get over the situation and now handle this. And oh, this is so what's unacceptable. This is so uncomfortable. The discomfort that you have to go through to accept first a situation. And then imagine a person that has loans in the foreign country. You have to pay out all those loans in a heartbeat when you probably had it projected to pay it off, I don't know, 3 to 5 years. Now it's like in 30 days, you have to settle all your accounts, close out any pendings, get your family together, get your clothes, get your stuff. I mean, there's so much. Now, are you in control of all of that? No. No. What you are in
So
control of is to say, what are the steps and who can help me? Again comes the part of resourcefulness. And you have no idea how important it is to reach out to people on groups, right? If you already have the idea that you're leaving, like me, start now. Get your groups together, get your support groups. If you have pets like me, I formed part of groups. I got information. There's people that are willing to help you. That's another thing. People forget that there's people that are willing to help, right? But at the impulsivity of the moment of being upset or just simply going through the process, you forget to ask for help. And you become desperate. You become a little bit out of control. You feel overwhelmed. But again, you only have control to a certain point, and that is get informed and ask for help. That's so important, and we forget about that. And we were
that 30 days.
that sucks, right? It
Oh,
completely
I
is.
mean,
Uh,
we decided when so my husband and I relocated from it was also a repatriation for me from the US to Luxembourg
mhm.
in 2011. And we decided to do the move in November, and we actually moved in September. So I had a long time. I had, about 10 months to go through this whole process. But, imagine it, your situation is like ours, where, half of the house is in reconstruction, home remodeling, things like that. It's like that takes months to figure all out, and
Mhm.
then downsizing, and yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
because we were really living there. We were not like you guys, you knew at all points that you would move back to the US. I
Yeah.
think it was,
Mhm.
you knew it was temporary, but you know, my husband is American. I had been there for over 20 years. So that was my home at that moment. And it was kind of like, okay, so shall we go to Europe? Okay, let's go to Europe. That might be a good time. Also because of family issues, kind of the same as you. So, yeah, big job. And so the 30-day thing is really, really crazy. And, you know, the stress is real. I really think the stress is real because it's our human thing that we do as soon as we have a lot of decisions to make or our circumstances shift. Because
Mhm.
let's be clear that a lot of these constraints pop up new when there's change happening. Whenever we go through change, we are inherently uncomfortable. That's what change is, right? That's what change is. It's changing parameters, changing context. And so when that happens, our body goes into this fight or flight or freeze mode. And you know, it's very clear. And so I think that we have to understand that that's part of the process. If we get really, really nervous, it's because we are feeling change. If we go through a grief process, we talked about that during a previous episode, right? It's a process, and we can kind of expect these stages that we go through. And, you know, not to get freaked out by our natural response
Mhm.
to change. Okay, that all it's sometimes it's not necessarily even the constraint that freaks us out, but it's our freak out about the constraint that freaks us out. Right? I mean, it's
Absolutely.
true. It's like, oh my God, look at me react this way. There's no way I can manage this. Rather than, oh, there's the constraint. Okay, I can manage that. So understanding that our reactions, and the more knee-jerk that they are, the scarier they are oftentimes, are just natural human responses to change. And when we understand that there's nothing wrong with us, or that this feeling that we have is not an accurate indicator of our capabilities of solving the issue, then it kind of helps us to get through that a little bit easier. Do not get freaked out by your freak out, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That it's really, really true, because you know, it's otherwise we enter the spiral, right? We're nervous, we get even more nervous, we get even more nervous, and then later we're overwhelmed, and you know, everything is in chaos, and then we truly become incapable of coping.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, you know, sometimes you also need a coach to kind of tell you that, listen, you're just experiencing something. So let's reset, let's find yourself again. Let's manage the stress. Let's come up with coping mechanisms, and let's reanalyze, you know, what's really happening,
Yeah.
maybe with a little bit more dissociated view, right? A little bit of
Yeah.
distance between you
Yes.
and the emotional part of it.
I think what I have realized personally when I have my outbursts, because they really are that, um, my freakouts, whatever you want to call it, slash freakouts, it's because I make assumptions. I start thinking about things that, number one, have not happened. Number two, that I believe could happen. Yes. And number three, about things that I'm just thinking that they're impossible to achieve. So can you see how much power I'm giving my brain to control me and tell me you can't achieve it? Out of just like that. The instead of saying, okay, let's think this through, because I can tell you right now, and I don't know if I told you, I think I did, I should have, that the day that my husband said, that's it, we're starting the moving process, oh boy, did I flip. And I didn't freak out. I flipped. Okay. Because I still thought that we were talking about 2 or 3 years. Like, and I'm saying 2, 3 years, and then another 2, 3 years, and then another. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, oh yeah, whatever, dude. And when he told me that, I was like, this guy is for real. Like, when things are not, there's no turning back from that moment. I flipped. I can't remember. I should have written down my emotions. I think I've missed the opportunity of writing down what is that goes through my mind when I feel that way. But I do remember that it was the losing the comfort. Oh yeah, we talked about this, losing the comfort, losing the entitlement of being comfortable and having all of these things in my disposition and people catering to me. Losing all of that in one single second, that's why I flipped out, right? Because I'm assuming that that is not going to be in the United States. Now, let's be honest, that's not an assumption, that's a
Yeah, because
comfort.
you were living with this certain status of the expat,
Yes.
maybe even the well-off expat
Yeah.
in the culture that you're in for a number of years now, and then you go back to the US, and you're just one of many.
Yeah.
Uh, you're
Exactly.
losing specialness,
Yes.
right?
Exactly. Nobody's going to call me again, madam or ma'am, or going to just carry my grocery bags to the car and me not
But
worry about anybody, taking my stuff. I mean, all of these things, they're not assumptions, they're real. But now, how do you manage that as an assumption becomes real? Well, you have to manage it, period. I'm sorry. There's no other way to say it other than to say, okay, so I'm going back and I'm not going to have all these comforts. But what will I gain? Okay, now the other side, what am I gaining? Well, at that moment, because the following question was, what was I gaining? There was nothing at that moment. I had no house. I had friends. I have family. I mean, of course, I have people that can help me, but you don't want help. You want to be independent because we've been doing that for the past 9 years. Right? So our mentality is
right.
now we are independent and we want to be able to manage things our way, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people out there think that way. You think that way. A lot of other managers and leaders and all of them, they're thinking, I have to be able to solve this by myself because that's how I've been managing myself. Right? Well, when you get the right coach, they tell you, well, what is that you want to achieve? Oh, okay, good question. What do I want to achieve? Well, I want to be able to have a house because I felt that I would grab my things and my entire life and put it into a black hole. That's how I felt. Okay, there was nothing, nowhere to put it. Where were my dogs going to be? Having 4 dogs. Where would my 4 dogs go? What would happen to us? How long would we be renting? How long would we be with our dogs? I mean, there was so many things. And you know how we solved it? By talking it through and through and through, and we bought a house. Thank God.
And a
Thank God
beautiful one.
I had the opportunity. Thank you so much. A great opportunity
Yeah,
to
yeah.
buy a house. Then now I feel like I have something solid, like I have something to stand on, right? And so now I feel
Now,
that, go ahead.
right now, the decoration has become this excitement about moving to this beautiful home and you know, uh, doing the interior design the way that you
Right. There's a
want, and furnishing
projection.
it the right, right, right. And I think that you touched on something really powerful earlier that, and here it comes again, it comes up at least once in every show. It's this assumption and expectation management.
Mhm.
Because, and I think it ties in quite a bit with the bias of negativity that the brain just jumps to the worst case scenario and jumps for free without any effort. Our brain jumps to all the things that can go wrong. And it requires effort. And as you say, sometimes a lot of effort to find the silver linings, to find the positives that are always there. I really believe, as a person and as a coach, I believe the positive aspects are always there, but we have to look for them. The negative you get for free, the positive you really have to expend energy. And the thing here again, if you get the overwhelm from this negativity, if you believe it, then it becomes even more exponentially more difficult to look for the positive, right? I have this imagery that I keep in my mind for thoughts that pop into my brain, right? Look at them like bubbles rising in a glass of champagne. They come,
Okay.
they come out of nowhere, they
Uh-huh.
bubble up and disappear. Okay. Just because you think something
Mhm.
doesn't mean it has validity, right? I used to tutor, and my students, they would usually like between 18 and 25. My students, they would know that one of my favorite sayings was, your brain is not your friend. Your
Yeah.
brain is not your friend. Just because something appears self-evident, or a thought pops in your head, it doesn't mean anything unless you really look at it and say, what assumptions is this based on? Is it true?
Mhm.
And so on. So, and I think to learn that and to keep reiterating that is also one of the things that a coach is helpful for, right? Because we always look at, and you practice in your coaching sessions to take a critical and self-critical look, a reflective look, I'm so sorry, at your situations, and at your responses, at your behavior, at what goes on between your ears. Yeah.
I can tell you one thing right now. I had a fun day today. I mean, I was packing like I think there's always something going on with me that just stops me from being able to look decent, right? But anyway, so sorry. But I was packing, yeah. And then a friend of mine calls me. She's Turkish, and she tells me, "Come." It's like, okay. So I stopped and I went to have a coffee, a Turkish coffee. And I don't know if you know this, but there's people, Turkish people like to read coffee. Okay. And so we had the coffee because she tells me, well, what do you want? Do you want tea or you want Turkish coffee? And I said, Turkish coffee. I need you to read me my future. And she does a really good job, I have to say. And then she started telling me my future, and all. It's fun. Like, it's fun because she shows you the stuff in the cup and all this kind of things, and you're like, oh yeah, I don't see it, but okay, yeah, yeah. And then I start thinking about what she tells me for the next few months. And then I have to prepare my mind to say, Sandra, that was just for fun. Okay. That is not real. It could happen and it could not happen. You never know. I mean, she did say a lot of things that I was like, damn, how do you know? But I want to forget it. And so I'm coaching myself to say it was just fun. Right. And so a constraint for me would be, out of this experience, would be for me to assume that she was right. Yes. And I don't know, manage my life around what she told me for the next 6 months. And if it doesn't happen, I would be probably frustrated. But I know in my mind, I'm already preparing myself to say it was for fun. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to forget it. I swear, I know I'm going to forget it. And then as they
Right.
happen, I might remember. But it would be fun to say and call her up now when I'm back in the US and tell her, hey, it's be fun. But that's as far as I
Yeah.
wanted to go. Yeah.
Right. And you did well, because what can happen is that something that's being said is triggering. And
Uh-huh.
then, you're getting worked up because of it. And that can then influence the way that you think, make decisions, and behave. So, sometimes you have to keep reminding yourself, is this real or not? And in this case, it's good fun, but it is not real. It's not a real data point.
Mhm.
And so sometimes I think, doesn't it also come down to a large degree onto self-discipline? That is also something, like sometimes we have to hold the proverbial reins a little bit tighter, especially I think if we have the self-awareness to realize that we are maybe a little bit more precarious or emotionally charged state. That's typically when I really try to pay attention, when I feel myself getting worked up because of something. And that I say, "Ooh, this is maybe more of a red zone, right? I mean, I have the flashing red bulb in my head, like be careful."
Woo!
And so I think that you learn to navigate and keep this kind of critical look and this ever slight sense of detachment. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like this not being managed entirely by your emotions, not giving in to these reflexes of knee-jerk reactions, right? I mean, let's say that you are the unfortunate one who gets fired, maybe for even not such good reasons, because maybe a company is restructuring. You get fired because of no fault of your own. You get rift, or whatever the latest modern acronym is to replace fired. And but it's there, and the knee-jerk reaction might be to burn the bridges, to get really upset, to cause a scene, to be huffy and puffy, to maybe like slam your boss against the wall, or whatever it might be, right? That's kind of the thing. And but then to say, okay, this is a tough moment. I realize that I'm really upset. Like, name your emotions, right? And I have to be a little bit more self-disciplined right now. And then really take a critical look. Maybe it's best not to burn bridges, because these might be people in my industry I will work with again. And that maybe need to write my reference letters or act as a reference and things like that. So it's tough. I mean, this all sounds very reasonable, but it's really, really hard, because unfortunately it's in the moments of emotional dismay that we are least able to think. I'm getting trained right now as a mediator. I'm nearly done. One more
Tell
week
us
to
about
go.
that. Tell us about
And yes, and so that's like the number one thing. Expect the parties that come to mediation. They're all, I mean, it's the definition. They're in conflict. They are very often very emotionally charged when they come to the table, and you have to realize that they are not able to communicate. They are not at their best when it comes to thinking clearly and thinking, so you have to really, like the dial on a hot plate, try to dial down the heat, literally, right? So that people can calm down enough that they can communicate and start this constructive, co-creative dialogue towards a mutually agreeable solution, hopefully. And for us, it's the same thing. When we are in that state where we need to think clearly the most, we are the least able to.
Correct. Correct. Well,
It's true. We're the least able to.
yes. And I was thinking right now, you being a mediator. So let me give you an example of something that I saw online, and you tell me what you think about it. So there's this girl that filmed. I mean, there's many people filming now how they get fired, right? And I'm thinking, number one, yeah, you do want to film it. Okay, film it. Fine. Okay. Then she films herself how she's asking questions about why she's getting fired and what happened. And unfortunately, the company cannot give her a good reason other than to say, we're downsizing and you are part of the process. They cannot legally, they cannot go out of script. They just have to say that. And so she posted it online, and it has been like this big thing, where she's talking about her emotions and all this kind of good stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, but at the end of the day, you got fired, right? I mean, there's no control over it. So she's going through something that she's reliving over and over and over because she posted that. How many times, number one, do you want to go through something that you should only have to experience once? Two, how many times do you want it to be public and people telling you what you should have, or could have, or would have, the shoulda, woulda, coulda? It no longer exists after that, and three, it's not going to change, right? It's
Right.
not going to change. You might as well take it with poise and dignity to say, I'm not going to change this. Is it good for a lawsuit? No.
Yeah, I think that she's entitled to her way of coping and her way of of feeling, as long as she keeps it legal, of course. We do not want to go into things of blatantly defaming the company or things like that.
Right.
I mean, if you're outraged, and you can show yourself being outraged all you want. And this is not a mediator stance, this is just my personal opinion, okay? I'm not judging anybody. Some might want the poise and the stiff upper lip, and others are gonna be like, lying on the floor, biting the carpet, right? Who are we to judge?
Yep.
But it's true that, and maybe, she wanted the attention, and maybe the attention helped her to come to grips with it, but it's not necessarily always helpful to rehash the same thing over and over. And I think that the main reason is because we can't dial down this emotional charge. Okay, we stay in this state of stress, right? But maybe she enjoys that, because why else would she do it, right? I'm speculating. I know nothing about this. But the thing is that recognizing that, yeah, I mean, even if you were to get your job back, would you want it? Okay, it's like what happened to me last summer. I was offered a job. I went to an interview, met with the director, met with the CEO. I got verbal okays that I would start 2 weeks later. And after the interview, they started ghosting me. Just nothing. Even after then, I started getting back to them, through emails, phone calls, LinkedIn later even, right? Nothing, absolutely ghosted. I was sad because it was a great opportunity. I would have loved to work with those people. They did interesting work. A company actually with a good reputation and good pay. So I really would have liked to work there. But if they would come back to me now and offer me the job, I would think really hard about accepting it. Because if, that's how they treat their, possible employees. And so, the thing is, you have to just let it go, right? They didn't hire me, so they didn't hire me. Okay. The thing is not about getting upset about, do I get hired or not? But, how do I rescue my business that I have not done any active marketing now for 3 months because I was expecting this job? Do you understand? Because, you're not actively prospecting for full-time coaching practice if you know that you're going to work 4 days a week. So that was more of it, like, now what? How do I turn around on this new future of which this job is not a part, and move on,
Mhm.
right? And so I think though that things like that can be trained. There's a little bit of future focus, solution focus, a more systemic view, and maybe having a slightly easier time coming to grips with the inevitable or the unchangeable. I think that it's a language and a thought process that we train, because I see it in my coaching clients. This is coaching 101, people. Okay, so all my coaching clients know about bias of negativity, locus of control, how to dissect limiting beliefs. They learn that. I teach them that. We practice it together, and later they can do it by themselves. And so, because we want our clients not to become dependent on us, we want them to become self-sufficient and more, capable human beings, and doing self-management by themselves without necessarily having a good coach there anymore. So these are tools that can be trained, and it becomes more of a second nature. Is that your experience, Sandra?
Um, it is. I think if I think about when I was, no, it's just that, yeah, I was, you caught me thinking about a personal experience. I think I've learned, thankfully, and we both have learned that sometimes you have to let some things go. I was also contacted, not last summer, I think it was sometime between winter time. A company wanted to work with me as global mobility and coach their people that were coming to Saudi Arabia. But they wanted to ask me questions about government and about the Vision 2030 that Saudi Arabia has and all this kind of good stuff. And I said, okay, well, wait a second. That I'm not familiar with, because I haven't worked with government affairs or anything related to laws or nothing like that. I'm going to be honest. I was honest up front because I didn't want to waste their time, and I didn't want to shame myself on the interview.
Right,
Okay.
but it's not what a coach does. It's not the
Exactly.
job of to consult or to give advice. We are coaching, and so it was completely out of a coach's purview. So what they
Thank
were looking
you.
for is really what
Exactly.
thinking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they told me, okay, no problem. We've talked with the client, and we're going to do the interview. I think it was on a Tuesday. We'll do the interview on a Saturday. Oh, they wanted the interview to be on December 23rd. I was like, excuse me, it's not gonna happen because I'm gonna be on vacation. And I'm sorry, but sometimes you have to put yourself first. We have been working all year, right? We have been doing all our stuff, doing the lives and working on our companies and everything else. And I'm thinking, I understand that your religion does not celebrate Christmas, but I do. So I told them, you know what? I'm going to be on vacation. I'm going to be unavailable around the time that they are going to want to have the interview. So when I come back, I would be more than happy to interview with them. Did I hear back from them? Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad, because when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that's another thing you have to understand. Put it in your mind. Some people are very hard to let go on these kind of things. And I'm going to be honest, and
Right.
I'm going
Right.
to be freaking honest. I just remember the other day, because I was cleaning up for the inventory here on my desk, and I found the papers that I had printed out to answer their government questions. I was like, oh, okay, what? I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm not going to
Okay.
worry about it. It's gone, it's done, and it wasn't for you. It wasn't for me, and that's it. So thinking about
And
something what you experienced, that's the closest that I've been to something similar, but we learn to let go. It hurts. Yes, it's the ego. It hurts. It's it.
yeah, for me, it was more, you know, the sadness about a missed opportunity,
Mhm.
because one thing also that helps to realize is, you know, them gaslighting me is more about them than it is about me.
Definitely.
Right? I mean, it's not has nothing to do really with my capabilities or my intentions or my you know ability to contribute to their team. They
Not at
just behave a certain way has nothing to do with me, right?
all.
And you know, rather than sitting there and say, "Oh, what did I do wrong? You know, didn't I interview well? You know, was I too old? Oh my God, you know, what can it be?" And so on and so on. You know, that second guessing,
It
you
doesn't
know,
serve
it's not
anybody.
necessarily some
Absolutely.
persons or some companies' way, which incidentally, anybody who is a leader or an HR person out there, don't do that. Right? I mean,
Exactly.
at least send an email. You know, it's not that hard to be civil and to say, listen, it didn't work out this time. You know, thank you for interviewing, and that's it. How hard is that? Right? Instead of just like, you know, dropping off the face of the earth and
You know why
really,
I think, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's just that I want to make a point here. I think the reason why HR and all of these departments that make these decisions don't come back to people, it's because we are not making people to get used to being rejected. Okay. There's nothing wrong with rejecting people, and there's a way to reject people. That's another problem. People are not coached and trained to how to reject people. They simply say, well, you know what, this is your job, just tell the person that they're not part of it. And they prefer not to answer since there's no follow-up of what you did with the candidate. And they prefer not to answer because nobody wants to tell somebody the bad news. And I think we have to start getting people used to receiving bad news. And that's the whole
right.
thing of all this, right?
It it's not just about rejection, it's about offboarding as well. It's but it even in general about feedback. We should do an episode about giving and receiving
That
feedback
would be fantastic.
sometime, because that is also, you know, what is really being said, how do I feel about it, what do I read into it, and then, you know, some better and less good ways of giving feedback, but also receiving it. I think
Yeah.
that really has a lot to do with it. Where are we on time? We're at 57:33. We filled
Wow.
another hour. I'll give you another chance maybe to wrap up and some final thoughts.
No, I think the point that you made at the end was fantastic, and I loved it, and I think that's a good way to end today's show. Thank you so much for that opportunity.
Because there's a lot that goes in here, and you know, but I think one of the things is just even in these things help is available, and you
Mhm.
know, coaches are available, and you'll have the opportunity to find a competent one. Sandra obviously is in the midst of move, so she is not available for new clients at this point. I still have some availability in my schedule, so please reach out if you're interested. In any case, we are nevertheless always happy to hear from you. Our contact information is in the description of this video. If you like this kind of content or have any kind of suggestions, please subscribe to the channel and interact, you know, through a like or a comment. That would be fantastic. We will be back with more next week.
Yes,
So thank
absolutely.
you very much. It was fun. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Claudia. Take care. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Bye bye.